Okay, as Gary said, I am definitely much more at home when it comes to teaching how to do a smoky eye or the perfect complexion. So I do have a tiny bit of imposter syndrome standing up here, and especially given that the last 2 weeks in lead up to this event, I was questioning why I was even agreeing to do this, why I was standing up here. And then I went into, I'm used to public speaking, but I'm used to public speaking in my arena. And when it was this subject matter, I then went and I thought, right, I'll do a little bit of research, I'll see what other people have to say on the subject matter. So I went down a rabbit hole and started looking at TED Talks, and I started looking at really, really astute people talking about analogies with acorns, and I went, oh my God, I'm actually more nervous now than when I started to do the research. And I just went, sack that. So I thought to myself, well, self-belief, it is something that I've had to work on. It's something that I have a little bit of experience behind, because there have been sort of key markers that I've really had to dig deep and find that self-belief in order to do something and accomplish something I wanted to get to the other side of. And I want to kind of talk you through, because whilst listening to every single speaker, and I think some of the speakers have addressed it as well, I don't think any single one of us can stand here and pass on to you the exact secret that's going to work for you to give you self-belief. I think it's something that we all have to find our own recipe to make our own individual cake, and that recipe is going to be different for every single person and every single thing that you want to achieve. And for me, I'm going to talk a little bit from the very beginning, a little bit about something that happened to me that really helped, I suppose, my recipe come together, and how I'll be able to pull in different things at different times, because self-belief isn't something that you suddenly have a eureka moment and you have self-belief to do something and you put it in place and you achieve it and that's the end of it. It sort of goes up and down, kind of like your iPhone battery. You still have to charge it up, and you still have to find other ways of being able to kind of bring the full maximum to what you need to do in terms of energy to go to the next things you want to achieve. Does that make sense? And I think one of the things that when I started to kind of mentally plot what I was going to say here tonight, I went back to the very beginning. And in a former life, before I'd done anything with makeup, I was a musician. And I started music a little bit later, so I started maybe about P7. And I remember just being so enthusiastic about it. I went to a private teacher. The first main instrument that I learned was accordion. And I suppose this teacher, and we all have different people, we all have those role models that we have encounters with that create those key moments that can sort of change and alter our perspective going forward, and how we bring our mindset into lots of different things that we then will experience through life. She was one of those people for me, and to bring you back to that, I was always a very sort of conscientious person, so when it came to music, I couldn't wait till I was at the side of being able to compete and get into competitions and all of those things. And when I started I was with her about 4 or 5 months, and knew there was this competition coming up, and I begged her, could I go and do it? She said no. So I had to have enough respect. She said, no, you're not ready. I said, right, okay. So I worked for another year, and then the competition came around again, and she said, okay, I'll let you go in and you're going to compete this time. At this stage, I had a good bit of time under my belt, and it was quite good. I was coming along and everything, and went into the competition. And it's kind of like a metaphor. Whenever I thought back of the entire experience of that competition, I don't know if you've ever went into a competition like that, a music competition. It was in a hall. It was filled with people like this. I went onto a stage. The stage was like that, complete slope. That started to throw me. I sat down in a chair that was really small as well. I was quite tall for my age, so that was another thing that threw me. You have to sit there and you have to wait for your adjudicator to kind of nod at you to when to start. So I got up on the stage, sat down, and got myself together. I could feel my heart starting to beat. I could feel my breath starting to go a little bit less tame. And I was waiting for the nod. And within that, I scanned the room. And if you've ever been to a competition, you know that the biggest majority of people who are sitting looking at you are constantly waiting for you to mess up. They want you to mess up. You can feel that energy, because if you mess up, whoever they're there supporting is going to do that a little bit better potentially in the competition. So you have to turn around and you have to deal with all of that energy coming towards you, that idea that there are those people who will say things that will be unkind, that will wish maybe not the best result to come your way. And I started to play, and I messed up big time. I was a mess. I had wrong notes all over the place. Needless to say, I didn't win that competition, but came out of it completely crushed. Then, what I needed to do was put something in place, because I had another competition about a month and a half later, which was the county championship. And I was like, I didn't want to put myself in that position again, I didn't want to mess up. So she took me through, and it's one of the key things that I always talk about, which is the mental preparation for dealing with anything that you want to achieve. You can do all the different things, you can talk to all the different people, you can go to all of the different talks, but if you don't mentally prepare yourself for how you're going to experience and get to the thing that you want to achieve, then nothing else will work. So she started the fundamentals of how to do that, and she taught me different things, whereby whenever I went to play again, I rest my head on top of the accordion. I closed my eyes, and I literally took everybody out of that room. So those are some of the things. Before I started to play, I composed myself. She went through some breathing, and I was able to completely escape everybody. There was nobody else, and the only person I looked at when I was on that stage the next time that I had to do a competition was the adjudicator straight in front of me. So when they gave the nod, I took nobody else's eye line in sight. I closed my eyes again, and I played. And then I continued to win competition after competition going forward. I didn't win every competition, but the biggest thing that I learned there, but through that failure came so much more successes. And it's not always about getting everything right. It's not always about turning around and what you put out there is what you're always going to get back, but it's about trying to put the things in motion. I'm a realist as well, so you can turn around and people can tell you tonight, you know, believe in yourself, believe what you have to do, but I also believe that you have to be realistic as well, where you have to put in the graft, the hard work. You have to put in things like, when it came to music, repetition. So you have to repeat lots of different things. You have to repeat, for music, it's obviously scales, it's obviously melodies. And I'm a great believer on the quote that somebody once said to me, which is, don't do something until you get it right, do it until you can't get it wrong. That's how well practiced you need to be before you're able to turn around. And it's okay to have that self-belief, but it's not just going to come. Every day she used to tell me to do different things. So she would give me exercises, obviously, to practice, but other things as well, which was to mentally get into that place where I could hear my name being called out. I would have to go there, I'd have to hear the applause whenever I'd win the competition. So psychologically, I'd be ready to lift that trophy whenever I'd walk into a competition. That was great, that really helped then build me as a person. And music was something I was so passionate about, you know. And even within my music journey, I remember starting at maybe P6, P7, and by the time I reached first year, I wanted to branch out and learn another instrument. And you know, we always talk about different people trying to throw you curveballs, even when you think you're going in a good direction. And I remember going for an audition for another instrument. I wanted to learn the clarinet in school, and I went in for the audition, and they asked me to sing back a melody. I couldn't sing the melody back to her, and she just basically, the girl who's in moderating everyone, just basically said, "You've no musicality." I went, okay. I was so embarrassed because it was in front of a group of people, and I just left. She didn't take into consideration I was going through adolescence, my voice was breaking. Now, not that I'm a particularly great singer, but I could pitch, I could a melody back, but I couldn't whenever my voice was breaking. But then, it then spurred me on, well, I'm going to show them. And then, I think it was about 6 months later, I won my first All-Ireland Championship. And to me, those sort of things, you can either let them deflate you, which you can do, you can feel embarrassed, you feel awkward, or you can let them be your driver to throw your momentum forward and to push you to then be even bigger and better than what you need to be at that time when that happened to you. That's one aspect of my life, and those sort of things is where I've been able to kind of then go and pull on those things whenever I've needed them. Another key marker was whenever the career I'm doing right now, which is makeup artistry. I remember going for the interview at the start. It was never a career that I wanted to do. Makeup artists were in Hollywood, and that was my kind of idea of what makeup artistry was about. And it was only through a friend working for MAC at the time, it opened maybe 6 months, and they really wanted a boy on a makeup counter over here. And I had no experience. I just came out of, well, I think I just walked out of a job. I was musical director for the Waterfront for their pantomime seasons, and I just couldn't take another panto season. I was ready to bang my head off that keyboard if I had to turn around and listen to that same performance over and over and over again. And anyway, that's a whole other story. But I said, you know what, I just want something easy. I want something I don't have to think about. I don't want to cue a show. I don't want that pressure. So I went in, and my friend said, look, why don't you go in for it? They really want a guy. It's really as a cashier. It's more the idea of you standing there. Went into the interview. Got on grand with the girl, you know, in the interview. I basically turned around and was really honest, and I said, I actually don't know if I want this job. I'm being totally honest. I said, something to do with working hard. I'll work hard. I'm good. I think I'm good enough with people, all of those things. And she said, look, we've had 70 applications. Take the job. If you don't like it, we'll have you replaced right away. And I said, okay, I'll do it. I went, and I completely fell in love with it. Because my decision for going and studying at university was between art and music. I chose music. It was absolutely horrendous course. I hated every moment of it. I took off on more touring things, and it was away more than it was in the college. And I did miss the art. But then whenever I got this opportunity, I then felt, this is a way for me to express myself. This is another way. So then I continued to take all of the flack that maybe a lot of you haven't ever thought about, but at the very beginning, the amount of people that stirred, the amount of people who walked away from a guy giving advice, because eventually they kept me on and they began to train me, and that was the start of my actual career in makeup artistry. At the start, it was a cashier job on a makeup counter just to create a little bit of a buzz. But I fell in love with it. I drove the girls nuts, giving me information and drawing everything out for them. And eventually then, it actually became my greatest strength. Because those people who then walked away, that didn't feel like it was appropriate for a man to give advice on makeup artistry, it actually became the thing that made me stand out. Because it's like, oh, you know the guy that does makeup? And then eventually it became, oh, you know, it's Paddy that does makeup. And that then allowed me then to build more of a quicker reputation, as well as then developing it into the real artistry, which was the likes of body painting and drawing and being super creative, as well as just doing beauty makeup. But it didn't come without its drawbacks as well. It came to a stage where I was starting to get a lot of work my way, and I moved from Mac to Space NK at the time, and it got to a stage where I was turning down work. I was turning down jobs that would have paid me what I would have been standing in that shop the entire week to earn in terms of money. And it came to the point where I wasn't sure if I should go freelance, and it was a big decision coming away from that consistent. Whilst I was getting jobs, you know, they weren't every single week. You might have gaps and all the rest of it. So I had to turn around and I had to pull on that strength and just to know, do you know what, I don't have an option. I can't fail at this. I have to pay at the time my rent, I had to pay my bills, and I had to do all of those things. I have to make this work. So I went out and I constantly banged on doors. I went to more courses as well. I saved up money to go on more courses, which is also another thing as well. When you're talking about self-belief, it's about building your confidence within, making sure that your skill set is there. There's no point you thinking that everything you're going to do is fantastic. That's not what self-belief is. It's being real with what you need to improve to get better. Because one of the things that I do as a teacher when it comes to makeup now, when students come to me, is like, we want confidence. I can't teach you confidence, but what I can do is build your trust in me, that when I tell you something's wrong, you know to fix it. But when I tell you something's right, which isn't going to be all the time, then you really have your confidence to know that you're doing it in the right way. So building those circle of people around you to know that you're building networks, you're building contacts, you know that you're ready for your next step and you're not trying to run ahead either. I see a lot of people trying to run to the finish line when they haven't even warmed up yet. So making sure that you're paced within where you want to get to, that you're building yourself up with the right sort of skill set, that you're taking advice. So when I did then eventually leave, I was so passionate, I was so hungry. The amount of jobs I'd done for free at the beginning, just get my profile built up, to know that it would eventually lead on to something. I could see what I wanted to achieve. And that's the other thing when it comes back to how do you associate with the first thing that you learned, which was how I mentally seen the final thing that I wanted to achieve, which is I wanted my own shop. I wanted to have this hub of creative people around me that we could bounce ideas, because I believe collectively we can build so much more as a group of people than what you can sometimes individually. I think no one person is the right answer for every single thing that you want to know, because there's always something that someone else can add. There's always another perspective. There's always something else that you haven't thought about. And that's what I wanted to create. I wanted that creative space. So I slugged my guts out. I'd done freelance. I hired a chair. And eventually it came to a stage where I remember going to the bank to, and this is where you talk about self-belief. If I didn't have it, I wouldn't have been able to do the next thing, which was, in order to open Makeup Pro, I wasn't in the position where I had family that could hand me a check. I went to the banks. So I wrote my business plan, and a lot of people were there planting seeds of doubt, which was, you're not going to get people that's going to pay you to do their makeup because there's other counters where it's redeemable against product. And my answer was, they will if it's good enough. They will if I train my staff to be on par to the way that I know makeup artistry should be done. Some would say that's arrogant. It's not. It's because I put the hours and hours and hours of practice in. Know the difference between knowing your worth and knowing when you're being arrogant. It's not arrogance to turn around and say after you've worked hard at something, to fully appreciate where you've got to and to know that you can pass it on to somebody else. And that's where I wanted to get to within my makeup artistry. So I remember going to the first place, and the girls spent, when I don't know if you've ever been to one of those bank meetings, but they're obviously seen as, you have to bow down to their sort of like train of thought, and you're like, you're wrong, but yeah, okay. Wrong again, but okay. You're so funny. Not even cracking a smile inside. So I'm just like, get me away from her before I stab her. So she was so patronising. I remember she was from New Zealand, she was in the bank, and she basically laughed at the concept that I created, that I wanted to create a multi-brand store with products that really hadn't landed here, that people would come in and pay to have their makeup done, and lessons and all the things that we do. And she just went, no, I don't think it's going to work. Thank you so much for your time. And left. I went to another one, and they said, okay. I think they'd seen something in an article, which actually maybe had helped. There was a newspaper article, and he had seen me in the paper, and he went, well, you're getting a profile, you're getting this, that, and the other. And I went, yeah, we'll do that, but we need something in return if we're going to give you the money as a startup. And I said, what? Well, we want to take it on against my mum and dad's farm. So I was like, how do you feel about being homeless, woman? So I turned around and went, okay, well, I can either embrace this and go forward with it, or I can run to the hills and be scared. And I went, if there was ever a time to believe in what I could see, what I wanted to achieve, it's this. I have to see this, and I have to see it through the end. So I said, I'll do it. Whatever I have to do to pay that money back, I want to make sure that it's paid back. So if this concept of the shop and all of this doesn't work, I'll find some other way. But I will find a way of making this a success. And it was the biggest motivator to help me get to that point where I literally had to ask myself, do you believe in yourself that much that you're willing to take that bigger risk? And it took a lot of self-reflection, it took a lot of self-doubt, it took every one of those demons turning around and saying, but what if this happens, and what if that happens, what if you do this? And we could do that forever. At some point you have to take and work out for yourself, is this the right thing for me? Am I going to really do this? Have I put in enough hours? Am I good enough? And I went, yeah, I can do this. And I did, and I paid the money back, and obviously it's 10 years now since the shop has opened. And yeah, I mean, there's always ups and downs. I think anyone in business can verify that. But I think that if I hadn't have the right people around me to build me as well, if I hadn't have that resilience that you need to have, these are all your ingredients. These are all the things. And as Kim said at the very start, what is it that you want to get out of tonight? I knew I wanted to do the key things that I needed to really, really work on self-belief and knowing that I could achieve what I wanted to put my mind to. Does it mean that I have self-belief in every aspect of my life? No, it's not. Does it believe that sometimes even that thing that I have achieved will sort of dip a little bit, and I need to sort of go, well, hold on a second, I'm sort of second guess myself in my business or whatever it is. I need to kind of refocus and pull everything together. Yes. So you constantly go back and you have to re-look at what you are lacking in and think about what is the next thing that can propel you back up again, or to achieve your next part of whatever it is that your model that you want to work on. And it could be personal development, it doesn't always have to be business, it doesn't always have to be financial, it could be I want to, my thing within my makeup at the very beginning, it wasn't for the business aspect of it. I wanted this hub. I'm kind of arty-farty with how I'm thinking about it. Never the sort of pounds and pence aspect of it. Accountants bore the life out of me. I'm a typical artsy person at the core, but also have to be realistic that the money needs to be there in order to pay the bills and all of those things. But it was always to create the work, the standard of work, the artistry, to create those opportunities for new artists, because I was training these artists and they were just going off, and I wasn't able to hold on to this real talent. That was one of the things that made me want to open the shop, was that I had then the next stage for them. I was doing maybe a 10-week course and they were going off, and some of them were kind of like floating about, and maybe they didn't have the real drive and passion to propel themselves or to really use that talent. One of the most beautiful things that I get to do as a teacher is I get to find new talent. Raw, beautiful. I sometimes look at what they have and I know I can make you a star in what you can do within your field, because they just have that thing. It comes down to attitude, because even that person who comes in with that natural raw talent, who I know could be absolutely amazing, can they be overtook by somebody who's less talented but much more ambitious and hungry and passionate? Yes. Because it doesn't always come down to the talent, it comes down to the mindset that you need to have in order to achieve how you think about everything and reach every one of your dreams. So I hope that has kind of given you a little bit of something to walk away with tonight, and some of the key things that you need to kind of bring in, build your self-belief, to be able to fulfill whatever it is that is your burning desire. Don't try to fulfill every one of your burning desires all at once. That would be my first lesson. But take it step by step and build yourself up to that. And don't be hard on yourself if you don't suddenly wake up tomorrow morning and go, God, I've now filled to the brim of self-belief. That didn't work. What was the point of that talk last night? Know that each one of the speakers so far has given you so many different key things that you can put into that. And hopefully you start to then put them into your day-to-day life. Every day, not just once a week, not just twice a week, but every day, bit by bit, and build yourself up to full energy. Thank you so much.